I raised my hand to ask a question in class, and my teacher had escorted out by security. My 3 roommates cornered me in our apartment living room. Lily held up her phone showing her banking app. Someone stole $340 from my account. It was you. I shook my head. What? No, I would never. You were the only one home Thursday. The second roommate cut in. We all checked the cameras. They showed me screenshots. The money disappeared at 2:17 p.m. I'd been home alone doing laundry. Oh, fantastic. This was going great. Admit it, Lily demanded. I didn't take anything. I swear. Then explain this. She showed me a Venmo notification to my account for $340 from a random username, time-stamped the same day. I stared at the screen, confused and panicking. I don't know what this is. Someone's setting me up. Lily's eyes narrowed. If you don't confess right now, I'm going to ruin your life. I walked to class in a daze, texting my mom what happened. She didn't respond. My hands were shaking. My phone buzzed. A screenshot from Instagram. Lily had posted, "When your roommate steals from you but plays victim." Already 63 likes. Comments poured in. People I barely knew were messaging me. Then the full weight of my situation crashed down on me. Professor Braille was Lily's aunt, which meant Lily had definitely already called her with a completely twisted version of what happened. My chest did that fun thing where it feels like someone's sitting on it. Another text. This time from a classmate. Yo, is it true you stole money? The rumors were spreading fast. I reached the lecture hall early, determined to act normal, prove I wasn't the person they were claiming. I took my usual seat in the 4th row, pulled out my notebook. Students filtered in. Some glanced at me and whispered to their friends. My face decided now was a great time to cosplay as a tomato. Professor Braille entered. Our eyes met for half a second. Her expression was ice cold, lips pressed into a thin line. She looked away quickly. Class started. She launched into the lecture about market equilibrium. I tried focusing on my notes, but my heart was doing a drum solo I didn't ask for. Every few minutes, I felt people's eyes on me. 12 minutes in, the professor paused. Can anyone explain the relationship between supply curves and price elasticity? I knew this. I'd studied this chapter twice. My hand hovered near my lap. Should I answer? Would it look bad? Or would staying silent make me seem guilty? I decided. I raised my hand. Show her I'm engaged. Show her I'm not a thief. Professor Braille's eyes locked onto my raised hand. She stopped mid-sentence. The entire room went silent. Students turned to look at me. The pause stretched on. 3 seconds. 7. Her face had gone completely blank. Put your hand down, she finally said, voice flat. I blinked. I just wanted to answer the, I said put your hand down. Her voice rose. I will not tolerate this kind of disruption in my classroom. My hand dropped to my lap. I don't understand. You asked a question and I, do not speak. She cut me off sharply. Not another word. The girl next to me scooted her chair away slightly. Everyone was staring. My face was now upgrading from tomato to full supernova. Professor Braille picked up the phone on her desk. My heart decided to just stop showing up for work entirely. Yes, I need security to lecture hall C217, she said calmly. Immediately, please. I have reason to believe a student may have illegal items in their possession. Wait, I managed. Why are you calling security? I just raised my hand. She turned away from me, addressing the rest of the class. I want everyone to know that I take classroom safety very seriously. Disruptive and threatening behavior will not be tolerated. Threatening? My voice sounded like I'd been inhaling helium. I didn't threaten anyone. I was answering your question. She refused to look at me, just stood there, arms crossed, waiting. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway 73 seconds later. Everyone had their phones out now, some texting frantically, others taking photos. That student, Professor Braille pointed at me. She needs to be removed from my classroom. I'd also like you to check her bag. Given recent incidents, I have concerns. Ma'am? One guard looked at me. We're going to need to search your belongings. What? No, you can't. My hands trembled as they took my backpack. The guard unzipped it and started pulling things out. Notebook, laptop, pencil case. Then his hand stopped. He pulled out a small Ziploc bag with white pills inside. I'd never seen them before in my life. These yours? He asked. No. I don't know what that is. Someone put that in there. My voice cracked. Professor Braille's expression was smug now. Satisfied. Like she'd been expecting this. The guard exchanged looks with his partner. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us. Now. This is insane, I whispered, everyone watching me. I literally just raised my hand. Professor Braille finally met my eyes directly. You know exactly what you did. The security guards flanked me as I walked down the aisle. 180 students watched in complete silence. Someone's phone camera followed me. Just before the door, I turned back. I didn't do anything, I said, my voice doing that embarrassing crack thing. The door closed behind me. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I stood outside the building, staring at nothing. My entire life falling apart over $340 I didn't take. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. The taller guard pulled out his radio and spoke into it about securing evidence while the other one looked at me and asked for my student ID. My hands were shaking, so bad I could barely unzip my wallet. Students poured out of the lecture hall doors behind me, every single one staring as they passed. Some slowed down to get a better look. Others had their phones out taking pictures. My stuff was still scattered on the ground where they'd dumped it. The younger guard, whose name tag said Kevin, picked up the pill bag and held it closer to his face. He turned it over a few times, then looked at me. He asked me to describe what was normally in my backpack. I tried to steady my voice, but it came out all wobbly. I told him my economics textbook, a spiral notebook, 3 pens, my laptop, a phone charger, and my water bottle. He wrote something down in a small notebook he'd pulled from his pocket. He asked if I took any medications or supplements regularly. I shook my head and said no, nothing like that. He made another note and underlined something. The other guard was talking on his radio about transporting me to headquarters. Kevin put my things back in my backpack, including the pill bag, and zipped it up. They each took a position on either side of me and told me to come with them. We walked across campus and I could feel everyone's eyes on us. A girl from my dorm saw me and her mouth literally fell open. The security office was in the basement of the administration building. They brought me through a side entrance and down a hallway with flickering lights. Kevin opened a door to a tiny room with just a table and 3 chairs. He told me to sit down and wait. They took my backpack with them and closed the door. My phone started buzzing in my pocket immediately. I pulled it out and the screen was full of notifications. Text messages, Instagram comments, Snapchat messages, all coming in faster than I could read them. I tried to open one, but Kevin came back and told me I needed to put my phone away. He said I wasn't allowed to contact anyone until they finished their initial report. I asked how long that would take, and he said he didn't know. He left again, and I heard voices in the hallway. Someone mentioned chain of custody, and someone else said something about documentation requirements. I sat there staring at the blank white wall, my phone still buzzing every few seconds in my pocket. I had no idea what was happening or what they were going to do to me. Kevin came back about 15 minutes later with his notebook. He sat down across from me and asked me to walk him through my entire morning. I told him I woke up at 7, took a shower, got dressed, and grabbed my backpack from my desk chair at 7:45. He asked if anyone else was in my room that morning. I said no, my roommates were already gone to class. He wrote that down. He asked when I'd last looked inside my backpack before class. I thought about it and said probably last night when I was doing homework. He asked if I'd left my room at all between 7:45 and when I went to class. I said no, I'd gone straight from my room to the lecture hall. He made more notes and asked if my door was locked when I left. I told him we don't usually lock our doors during the day because we're always coming and going. He looked up at me and asked who had access to my room. I realized what he was getting at. I said all 3 of my roommates could go in whenever they wanted. He wrote something and circled it. Then he asked about my relationship with my roommates and specifically with Lily. My stomach dropped. I explained about the accusation this morning, about the Venmo thing, about how she'd threatened to ruin my life. Kevin's pen moved faster across the page. He asked if Lily knew I'd be in that class today. I said yes, she definitely knew because she'd mentioned her aunt teaching it. His eyebrows went up slightly when I said that. He asked me to clarify the connection between Lily and the professor. I explained that Professor was Lily's aunt, and that Lily had probably called her before class to tell her some twisted version of events. Kevin put his pen down and looked at me for a long moment. Then he stood up and said he needed to discuss something with his supervisor. I heard the door to another office open and close. Voices carried through the thin walls, but I couldn't make out specific words. Then a woman's voice got louder, asking questions that sounded pointed. The door opened and a woman in a security uniform with more badges on it came in with Kevin following behind her. She introduced herself as the head of campus security and asked Kevin to summarize the situation. He went through everything: the classroom incident, the professor calling before any disruption happened, the pills appearing right on top of my other belongings, my explanation about the roommate situation. The security head's face got more and more uncomfortable as he talked. She asked why the professor had called security before actually finding anything concerning. Kevin said he didn't know. That seemed unusual to him too. The other guard who'd been with Kevin came in, and the security head asked him if he'd noticed anything odd about the situation. He admitted that the professor had seemed really eager for them to search my bag, like she was expecting to find something. The security head made a note and said this needed more investigation before any decisions were made. She told me I could make one phone call now. I pulled out my phone and tried calling my mom. It rang 5 times and went to voicemail. I tried again. Same thing. I tried a 3rd time, and then I remembered she'd mentioned she had surgery rotations today and wouldn't be able to answer her phone. My hands started shaking again. I was completely alone in this. I sat in that tiny office accused of stealing money and having drugs, and nobody even knew where I was or what was happening to me. The security head saw my face and told me to take a few deep breaths. She said they were going to continue investigating and figure out what actually happened here. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was stacked against me. I sat there for another 20 minutes just staring at the wall and listening to my phone buzz. Then I heard the front door of the security office open and someone talking to the desk officer. A male voice I recognized. Jeremy from my economics class. I heard him say he needed to speak with someone about what happened in class today. The desk officer asked him what this was regarding. Jeremy said he'd recorded the whole thing on his phone because something felt really wrong about how the professor was acting. My heart jumped. Someone had actually recorded it. Kevin must have heard too because his door opened immediately. He came out and asked Jeremy to come with him. I heard them go into a different room and the door close. For a while I couldn't hear anything. Then muffled voices started up. Jeremy's voice explaining something. Kevin asking questions. This went on for about 20 minutes. Then Jeremy's voice got louder, saying something about how it was obvious the professor had it out for me from the start. Kevin's door opened and I heard his footsteps going quickly down the hall to where the security head's office was. He knocked and went in. More muffled conversation. Then the security head's voice saying something sharp. Kevin came back out and I heard him ask Jeremy if he could send him that video right away. Jeremy said sure, and I heard the little whoosh sound of a message sending. Kevin went back to the security head's office and knocked again. He went in and closed the door. I pressed my ear against my door trying to hear what they were saying. The security head's voice sounded troubled. She said something about reviewing the footage immediately. Then she said something about student affairs and administrative review. My door suddenly opened and I jumped back. The security head stood there with her phone in her hand. She told me to come with her to her office. I followed her down the hall and she gestured for me to sit in a chair across from her desk. She pulled up a video on her phone and started watching it. Her frown got deeper and deeper as it played. I could hear my own voice from the video asking why security was called. Then the professor's voice cutting me off. The security head watched the whole thing twice. Then she picked up her desk phone and dialed a number. She asked whoever answered if someone from student affairs could come to the security office right away. She said they had a situation that needed immediate administrative review. She used the words concerning elements and possible misconduct. She hung up and looked at me. She said someone would be here soon to help me navigate this process. She explained that there were some serious questions about how the situation had been handled. I asked what that meant. She said she couldn't discuss details of an ongoing investigation, but that I should know my rights had potentially been violated. My phone buzzed again and I looked down at it. Another message from someone asking if I really stole money. Another Instagram notification showing Lily's post was up to 300 likes now. I felt sick. The security head told me to try to stay calm, that they were going to sort this out properly. I wanted to believe her, but everything felt like it was spiraling completely out of control. We sat there in silence for about 15 minutes. Then the front door opened again and I heard a woman's voice asking for the head of security. Kevin directed her back to the office. A woman in her 30s wearing a blazer and carrying a leather bag came in. She introduced herself as Harper Moore from Student Advocacy Services. She said she was here to help students navigate disciplinary processes and make sure their rights were protected. The security head gave her a quick summary of what had happened, then showed her the video Jeremy had taken. Harper watched it with her eyebrows getting higher and higher. When it finished, she looked at me and asked if anyone had explained my rights to me at any point during this process. I shook my head. She pulled out a legal pad and started writing things down. She asked the security head a series of questions about procedures and protocols. With each answer the security head gave, Harper wrote more notes and her expression got more serious. Finally, she looked up and said there were multiple procedural violations in how I'd been treated today. She said professors couldn't just unilaterally call security to search students without meeting specific legal standards. She said the search of my belongings had been conducted improperly. She said I should have been informed of my rights immediately. She turned to me and said we had a lot of work to do, but that she was going to help me fight this. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt like maybe someone was actually on my side. Harper pulled out her laptop and started typing fast. She explained that professors can't just call security to search students without a real reason to think there's immediate danger. Raising my hand to answer a question definitely didn't count as dangerous. She was already writing up a formal complaint about how professor handled everything. She asked me specific questions about exactly what happened in class and typed every detail I gave her. Kevin leaned against the desk and admitted something was bothering him about those pills. He said the bag was sitting right on top of all my other stuff, like someone wanted it found immediately. He'd dealt with actual drug cases before, and students who really had illegal stuff always hid it deep in their bags or pockets. Nobody just leaves evidence sitting out in the open where anyone could see it. Harper nodded and added that to her notes. She told Kevin she'd need access to my Venmo account records and the building security footage from Thursday at 2:17 p.m. when the money supposedly disappeared. We had to build a complete timeline showing the accusations were fake. Kevin said he could pull the dorm footage right now and Harper could submit a formal request for my financial records. I signed a permission form letting them access everything. My phone kept buzzing in my pocket and I finally pulled it out. 47 unread messages. Most were from people I barely knew asking if the rumors were true. Some were just question marks. A few said things like, "Wow, I can't believe you did that," from people who'd apparently already decided I was guilty. I opened Instagram and my stomach dropped. Lily's post had 200 likes now. The comments were worse than before. Someone had created a TikTok with text overlay saying, "My roommate the thief," set to some dramatic music. It had 3,000 views already, and people were stitching it with their own reactions. My hands started shaking again. Harper noticed and asked if I was okay. I showed her my phone and her face got hard. She took screenshots of everything for the evidence file. My phone rang and Mom's name flashed on the screen. I answered and immediately started crying. The words came out all jumbled as I tried to explain what happened. The false accusation, the Instagram post, Professor calling security, the pills someone planted, everyone thinking I'm a criminal. Mom was quiet for a second, and then her voice got that fierce protective tone she uses when something's really wrong. She said she was driving up tonight even though it's 4 hours away, and she has work tomorrow morning. Nothing was more important than this. She'd be there by midnight. I told her she didn't have to do that, but she cut me off. Her daughter was being falsely accused and publicly humiliated, and she was coming. End of discussion. We hung up, and I felt slightly less alone. Harper said we should go to the student health center, so a counselor could document my mental state. It would be evidence of the harm these false accusations caused. We walked across campus, and I kept my head down, paranoid that everyone was staring at me. The health center was quiet, and Harper explained the situation to the receptionist. A counselor named Sarah brought me into a small office and asked how I was feeling. I told her I wasn't going to hurt myself if that's what she was worried about. I was just devastated and terrified, and felt like my entire life was falling apart over something I didn't do. She asked more questions about my stress level, sleep, eating, support system. She wrote everything down and said she was documenting this for my records. It could be used as evidence if needed. The whole appointment took 30 minutes. When we got back to the security office, Kevin was waiting with his laptop open. He'd pulled the footage from my dorm building. He played it for us, and there was Lily walking down the hallway Thursday morning at 9:23 a.m. I was in my biology class at that time. She used her key to open our apartment door, went inside, and the timestamp showed she stayed for 8 minutes. Way longer than needed to grab something she forgot. Kevin zoomed in, and you could see she was carrying her phone. Harper leaned forward, watching intently. When Lily came back out, she looked around the hallway before walking away. Kevin said this was exactly the kind of behavior that suggested she was up to something. Harper asked for a copy of the footage, and Kevin said he'd send it to her secure email. She wanted to meet with the IT administrator next to pull my complete Venmo history. We walked to the technology building, and Harper knew exactly who to ask for. The IT admin was a guy in his 40s who looked tired, but interested when Harper explained what we needed. He pulled up my account and scrolled through the transaction history. There it was, the $340 payment from a username I'd never seen before. He clicked into the details and his eyebrows went up. The account that sent the money was created just 3 days ago using a burner email address. The account was deleted within hours of transferring the money to me. He said that was extremely suspicious and definitely not normal user behavior. Harper asked if he could trace where the account was created from. He typed for a minute and then nodded. The IP address matched the campus Wi-Fi network in my dorm building. He could narrow it down to which room made the account, if Harper submitted a formal request through proper channels. She said she'd do that immediately. My phone buzzed with a text from Jeremy. He said other students from class were talking about how weird Professor acted today. Several people thought she way overreacted to me just raising my hand. He was collecting written statements from witnesses who would say I wasn't being disruptive or threatening at all. He already had 5 people willing to write down what they saw. I showed Harper the message and she smiled for the first time since I'd met her. She said witness statements from classmates would be powerful evidence that Professor's behavior was completely unjustified. Things were finally starting to come together, and I had actual proof that I was being set up. I went back to my dorm room and waited. My phone showed 9:47 p.m. when I heard the knock. I opened the door and my mom pulled me into a hug that lasted forever. She held me tight and I could feel her heart beating fast against my shoulder. When she finally let go, she looked at my face for a long moment and then started unpacking her bag. She pulled out a yellow legal pad and 3 pens. She sat down at my desk and wrote evidence at the top of the first page. Under that, she wrote, "People to contact," then timeline. She was treating this exactly like a medical emergency at the hospital where she worked. She asked me questions and wrote down every answer. Who had the security footage? What Harper said about procedures? When the pills appeared? Where Kevin was in all this? She filled 4 pages in 20 minutes. She made a list of everyone we needed to talk to and put stars next to the most important ones. Harper's name got 3 stars. We met Harper at her office the next morning at 8. Harper had printed out everything and organized it into folders. She spread the documents across her desk in a specific order. The fake Venmo account creation. The security footage of Lily in my room. The IT admin's report about the burner email and IP address. The witness statements from classmates, Kevin's notes about the pills being positioned too obviously. She walked us through each piece and showed how they connected. Someone created a fake account to frame me. Lily had access to my room and my backpack. Professor called security before finding anything wrong. The pills appeared exactly where they'd be found immediately. My mom took notes on her legal pad while Harper talked. The pattern was obvious when you looked at everything together. This wasn't a misunderstanding or bad luck. Someone planned this whole thing to destroy my reputation and get me kicked out. Harper tapped her pen on the desk and said we needed to figure out why Lily did this. She explained that random false accusations were one thing, but proving motive would change everything. If we could show why Lily targeted me specifically, it became conspiracy and fraud instead of just a mistake. The difference mattered legally. It meant harsher consequences and made our case much stronger. My mom asked what kind of motive we should look for. Harper said usually it came down to money or revenge or covering up something else. She asked if Lily had any reason to need money urgently, or any grudge against me specifically. I thought about the past month. Lily had been weird about money constantly. She complained about her parents cutting her off during dinner one night. She mentioned maybe having to drop out because she couldn't afford next semester. She asked April to borrow $300 and got really mad when April said no. My mom stopped writing and looked up. She asked if I knew the exact amount Lily needed. I said I wasn't sure, but she kept mentioning specific numbers. My mom suggested we check if Lily had any financial aid issues or debts. She said the $340 amount was too specific to be random. Maybe Lily owed exactly that much to someone or for something. Harper picked up her phone and called someone in the financial aid office. She explained she was helping a student with a harassment case and needed to verify some information. She asked about any outstanding balances or holds on accounts. She gave them Lily's name and student ID number. She waited while they looked it up. Her expression changed. She thanked them and hung up. She told us Lily owed exactly $340 in unpaid fees from last semester. The fees were blocking her from registering for spring classes. The deadline to pay was in 3 days, or she'd lose her enrollment status completely. That explained why this happened now. Lily was desperate and running out of time. The pieces clicked together in my head. Lily took money from her own bank account. She transferred it to a fake Venmo account she created. Then she sent it to me from that account. She deleted the fake account right after. Now she had a paper trail showing money going to me. She planned to accuse me publicly and demand I pay her back. Then she'd have the money twice. Once from her own account that she moved around and once from me paying her back under pressure. It was actually kind of smart in a terrible way. My mom wrote double payment scheme on her legal pad and underlined it twice. Harper nodded and said this was exactly the kind of motive that would strengthen our case significantly. Kevin called Harper's cell phone while we were sitting there. He said he found something else. He'd been going through security footage from the lecture hall building. He found video from the class period before mine on the day of the incident. Someone entered the empty classroom and walked directly to the 4th row. They approached the area where I always sat. The person stayed near my usual seat for about 90 seconds. The video quality wasn't perfect because of the angle and lighting, but Kevin said the person's height and build matched Lily. The clothing looked like what Lily wore that day based on other footage. The timestamp showed this happened 30 minutes before I arrived for class. Harper asked Kevin to send her that footage immediately. She added it to our evidence pile. Harper opened a new document on her computer and started typing. She said she was filing formal complaints against both Lily and Professor with the office that handled student conduct issues. She listed every piece of evidence we had. Security footage from my dorm showing Lily in my room. Security footage from the lecture hall showing someone matching Lily's description. The fake Venmo account traced to our dorm's IP address. Witness statements from classmates about Professor's behavior. Documentation of how Professor violated proper procedures. The financial motive connecting to Lily's unpaid fees. Kevin's observations about the planted pills. The IT admin's report about the deleted account. She printed 3 copies and put them in folders. She said she'd hand deliver these today and request an emergency review. The dean's office called Harper back within 2 hours. Someone named Kathy Gonzalez wanted to meet the next day to discuss the situation. Harper said that was actually the dean of students herself, which meant they were taking this seriously. We showed up at the dean's office at 10 the next morning. Dean Gonzalez was a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She had our evidence folders open on her desk. She'd clearly already read through everything. She asked me to sit down and tell her what happened in my own words. I explained the whole thing from the beginning. The accusation in my apartment, the Instagram post, raising my hand in class, Professor calling security, the pills appearing in my bag. Dean Gonzalez listened without interrupting. She took notes on a tablet. When I finished, she looked at Harper and asked about the procedural violations. Harper listed each one. Calling security without cause, searching a student without proper authority, making accusations without evidence, using family connections to target a student. Dean Gonzalez closed the folders and leaned back in her chair. She said she needed to tell us something. Professor had 2 previous complaints in her file about showing favoritism to family members in her classes. One involved giving a nephew a better grade than he earned. Another involved helping a cousin get into a program he didn't qualify for. She also had a written warning from 3 years ago about inappropriate use of authority during a grade dispute. This wasn't the first time Professor had crossed lines. This incident fit a pattern of misconduct. It wasn't an isolated mistake or misunderstanding. The dean said that changed how seriously they had to treat this situation. She thanked us for documenting everything so thoroughly. She said formal proceedings would begin immediately. Dean Gonzalez picked up her phone right there in front of us and made 2 calls. The first was to the department chair telling them Professor was suspended right away, and someone else needed to take over her classes starting tomorrow. The second was to someone in student conduct explaining she was opening a formal case against Lily for filing false accusations and messing with evidence. She used those exact words while looking straight at me like she wanted me to know she was taking this seriously. Harper and my mom exchanged looks, and I could tell they were both surprised at how fast this was moving. The dean hung up and told us Professor wouldn't be allowed on campus during the investigation, and Lily would be notified of the charges against her within 24 hours. She shook my hand and said she was sorry this happened to me, and that the university failed to protect me properly. We left the administration building, and I felt like I could actually breathe for the first time in days. My mom hugged me in the parking lot, and Harper said she'd follow up on everything to make sure the proceedings moved forward. I went back to my dorm room, which still felt weird knowing Lily was just down the hall. My phone buzzed around 8 that night. A text from April asking if we could meet for coffee. She said she'd been watching everything happen and felt terrible about believing Lily without asking questions. She also said she had information that might help my case. I stared at the message for a solid minute trying to figure out if this was some kind of trap. Harper had told me to document everything, so I screenshot the text and sent it to her asking what I should do. She replied within 5 minutes saying I should meet April but bring my mom and her along as witnesses. We set it up for the next morning at the coffee shop on campus. I barely slept that night wondering what April wanted to tell me. My mom drove back up early and met me outside the coffee shop at 9. Harper showed up right after looking professional with a folder under her arm. April was already inside at a corner table looking nervous and picking at her napkin. She stood up when she saw us and her eyes were red like she'd been crying. We all sat down and April started talking before anyone could even order drinks. She admitted that Lily asked her to lie about checking the security cameras together. April never actually looked at any footage herself. She just took Lily's word that I was the only one home Thursday afternoon. She said Lily showed her some screenshots that looked official, and she didn't think to question it because why would her roommate lie about something that serious? April kept apologizing and saying she should have verified things herself, instead of just going along with whatever Lily said. My mom asked April why she was coming forward now, and April said because she realized Lily had been lying about a lot of things. She explained that Lily had been asking to borrow money from all the roommates over the past few weeks, and getting really angry when people said no. Lily tried to get April to give her $300 just last week, claiming it was an emergency, but wouldn't explain what the emergency actually was. April said no, because she didn't have that kind of money to spare, and Lily didn't talk to her for 2 days after that. April also mentioned that Lily had been acting paranoid and secretive, always on her phone and leaving the apartment at weird times. She said looking back on it now, the whole theft accusation seemed like Lily was projecting her own money problems onto me. Harper was taking notes the whole time and asked April if she'd be willing to put all this in a written statement. April nodded and said she would do whatever it took to help fix this mess. We were still sitting there when my phone buzzed with a text from Shiloh. It was long, and I had to scroll to read the whole thing. She was apologizing and explaining that she saw Lily going through my backpack 2 days before the classroom incident happened. Shiloh said she was coming out of the bathroom and saw Lily in my room with my backpack open on my bed. Lily claimed she was just borrowing a pen, but Shiloh thought it was weird because Lily had her own stuff and why would she need to dig through my bag? Shiloh didn't think much of it at the time because roommates borrow things, but now she realized Lily was probably planting those pills everyone found later. She said she felt horrible for not speaking up sooner and for believing Lily's story about the money. She wanted to know if there was anything she could do to help, and said she'd testify or write a statement or whatever I needed. I showed the text to Harper and my mom and April. Harper actually smiled for the first time since I'd met her, and said this was exactly the kind of evidence we needed. Harper pulled out her laptop right there in the coffee shop, and had April type up her statement while everything was fresh. She also had me forward Shiloh's text to her email, so she could add it to our evidence file. She explained that we now had proof Lily made up the camera story, had a clear money motive, and had the chance to plant evidence in both the Venmo situation and the pills incident. She said this moved our case from circumstantial to pretty much undeniable, because we could show a pattern of behavior and opportunity. My mom asked what happens next, and Harper said the university's disciplinary process would move forward, but we should also be prepared for the school to try to settle this quickly to avoid liability. She said universities hate this kind of publicity, and the fact that a professor was involved made it even worse for them. Sure enough, 2 days later, my mom got a call from someone identifying themselves as the university's legal counsel. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss the situation. Harper called me as soon as my mom told her and said this was probably them trying to get ahead of any potential lawsuit. She warned us not to agree to anything without her present, and to let her do most of the talking. We set up the meeting for the following afternoon in the administration building. The lawyer turned out to be a woman in her 40s wearing a gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase. She introduced herself, but I honestly don't remember her name because I was too nervous. She had us sit in a conference room and pulled out several documents. She started by saying the university acknowledged that serious problems occurred and how my situation was handled. She used the word failures multiple times, which Harper later told me was lawyer speak for we messed up bad and know it. The lawyer went through a list of things the university was offering. They would remove all records of the incident from my file like it never happened. They would provide free counseling services for as long as I needed them. They would move me to a single room in a different dorm right away so I wouldn't have to see Lily or deal with the awkwardness of living near April and Shiloh. She also mentioned they were taking the complaints about Professor and Lily very seriously, and appropriate actions were being taken. My mom jumped in and asked directly about Professor's job and whether Lily would face real consequences for what she did. The lawyer got careful with her words and explained that employee matters were private, and she couldn't discuss Professor's status specifically, but she assured us that disciplinary measures were being pursued through proper channels. She said the same thing about Lily and the student conduct process. Harper asked some pointed questions about timelines and whether these offers were contingent on us agreeing not to take legal action. The lawyer admitted that yes, they were hoping to resolve this internally, rather than through the courts. She said litigation would be expensive and time-consuming for everyone, and the university preferred to make things right through direct action. My mom looked at me, and I could tell she was trying to figure out if this was enough or if we should push for more. Harper suggested we take a day to think about the offer and discuss it privately. The lawyer agreed and gave us her card saying to call whenever we were ready. We left that meeting and went straight to a diner down the street to talk through everything. Harper said the offer was actually pretty good and showed the university was genuinely worried about liability. She thought we had leverage to ask for a few more things, but the main points were solid. The next morning, Dean Gonzalez called me directly on my cell phone. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the number, but something made me pick up. She said she wanted to personally apologize for how I was treated and make sure I understood the university was taking this seriously. She explained they were putting new training in place for all faculty about proper security procedures and student rights. She said my case had exposed problems in their systems, and they were committed to fixing them so this couldn't happen to another student. She asked how I was doing and if there was anything else she could do to support me. I told her about the lawyer's offer, and she said she thought it was fair and encouraged me to accept it. She also mentioned that the investigations into Professor and Lily were moving forward, and I would be kept informed of any developments. I thanked her for calling and hung up feeling like maybe this whole nightmare was actually going to end with some kind of justice. My mom was watching me from across the room and asked what the dean said. I filled her in and she nodded slowly like she was processing everything. She said she thought we should accept the university's offer and focus on moving forward, rather than dragging this out in court for months or years. We called the university lawyer the next morning and accepted their offer. She sent over paperwork within 2 hours and we signed everything electronically. The lawyer thanked us for being reasonable and said the university was committed to making this right. 3 days later, I got an email from Dean Gonzalez with the subject line, "Student Conduct Charges Filed." My stomach dropped when I opened it. The email explained that after reviewing all the evidence Harper and Kevin had compiled, the Office of Student Conduct was officially charging Lily with violating the student code on multiple counts, filing false accusations against another student, evidence tampering, theft by deception, conspiracy to harm another student's reputation and standing. Each charge carried serious penalties, including possible expulsion. The email said Lily had been notified and would have a hearing within 2 weeks. I read it 3 times trying to process that this was actually happening. Harper called me an hour later asking if I'd seen the email. I told her yes, and she explained what would happen next. Professor's faculty hearing was scheduled for the following week, and I would need to testify about what happened in the classroom. She asked how I felt about that, and I admitted I was nervous, but also angry enough about the whole thing that I wanted to make sure the professor faced real consequences. Harper said my testimony would be crucial because I could describe firsthand how she abused her authority and coordinated with Lily to set me up. She would help me prepare and make sure I knew what to expect from the process. The next day, Jeremy texted me asking if I'd heard about the charges against Lily. I said yes, and he told me he was organizing something. He'd been talking to other students from our economics class, and several of them wanted to submit statements supporting my version of events. They all thought what Professor did was completely wrong and wanted to help. Over the next few days, Jeremy collected statements from 12 different classmates. Each one described the classroom incident in detail and talked about how obvious it was that Professor was biased against me. Some mentioned how she refused to call on me even when I was the only one with my hand up. Others described the weird pause before she called security like she was waiting for something to happen. A few students noted that she seemed to know about the pills before the security guard even found them. Jeremy compiled everything into a single document and sent it to Harper, who added it to the evidence file. Meanwhile, Kevin from campus security sent me an email with lab results attached. The pills found in my backpack had been tested and turned out to be over-the-counter caffeine tablets you can buy at any drugstore. Not illegal substances, not prescription medication, just basic caffeine pills that thousands of students use during finals week. Kevin noted in his report that this supported the planted evidence theory, because if someone was actually trying to hide illegal drugs, they wouldn't use something you could legally purchase anywhere. The whole point was to create the appearance of wrongdoing without actually having illegal materials that could lead to serious criminal charges. It was calculated and deliberate. My mom helped me move into the new single room the university assigned me in a different dorm across campus. The room was smaller but private, and I didn't have to worry about roommates going through my stuff or making up lies about me. We were carrying boxes up the stairs when April appeared in the hallway. She looked uncomfortable and asked if she could talk to me for a minute. My mom gave me a look asking if I wanted her to stay, but I said it was okay. April apologized for believing Lily without questioning her story. She said she felt terrible about how everything went down and wanted to make things right. She offered to testify at Lily's hearing about the lies and manipulation. She could describe how Lily asked her to lie about checking the security cameras, and how Lily had been desperately trying to borrow money from everyone. I thanked her and said that would actually help a lot. Shiloh sent me a long text message that same evening apologizing and providing a written statement about seeing Lily with my backpack 2 days before the classroom incident. She said she'd been scared to come forward earlier because Lily was her friend, but she couldn't stay silent anymore knowing what really happened. She attached a formal statement Harper could use as evidence describing exactly what she saw and when. My mom had to leave the next morning to get back to work, but she made me promise to call her twice every day and attend all the counseling sessions the university was providing. She hugged me for a long time before getting in her car and told me she was proud of how I was fighting back instead of just accepting the false accusations. She said I was stronger than I probably realized, and she knew I would get through this. Watching her drive away made me feel lonely again, but also determined to see this through to the end. Lily's disciplinary hearing took place in a conference room in the administration building 2 weeks after the charges were filed. I had to sit in the same room with her for the first time since this whole nightmare started. She was at a table with some lawyer her parents hired, and she wouldn't make eye contact with me at all, just stared at her hands or whispered to her lawyer. The hearing panel consisted of 3 administrators, including someone from student conduct and a faculty member from a different department. Harper sat next to me at our table with all our evidence organized in folders. The panel chair explained the process and the charges against Lily. Her lawyer stood up and tried to argue that Lily was genuinely mistaken rather than malicious. He claimed she really believed I took her money and was just trying to get it back. He said the Venmo thing was a misunderstanding and the pills were probably already in my bag without Lily knowing. His whole strategy was painting her as confused and stressed, rather than calculating and dishonest. But then the hearing panel started reviewing the evidence. They watched the security footage of Lily entering my room alone and staying for 8 minutes. They examined the fake Venmo account traced back to our dorm's IP address. They read witness statements from April about Lily's lies and from Shiloh about seeing Lily with my backpack. They reviewed Kevin's report about the planted caffeine tablets and the timeline of events. Her lawyer tried interrupting and objecting, but the evidence kept piling up. Phone records showing texts between Lily and Professor coordinating the classroom setup. Financial records proving Lily owed exactly $340 in unpaid fees. Digital forensics showing she created the fake Venmo account from her laptop. Every argument her lawyer made fell apart under the weight of documented proof. Finally, Lily started crying and her lawyer asked for a break. When they came back 15 minutes later, Lily was shaking and could barely talk. The panel chair asked if she had anything to say, and she just broke down completely. She admitted she created the fake Venmo account and planted the pills in my backpack. She said she was desperate for money and panicking about the registration deadline. She claimed she didn't think it would go this far and just wanted to scare me into giving her money so she could pay her fees and stay enrolled. She said working with her aunt to set up the classroom thing seemed like a good way to pressure me, but then everything spiraled out of control. She kept saying she was sorry and didn't mean for it to get so bad. The panel deliberated for 90 minutes while we waited in the hallway. Harper bought me a coffee from the vending machine and told me it was almost over. When they called us back in the panel chair, read their decision. They found Lily responsible for all charges: filing false accusations, evidence tampering, theft by deception, conspiracy to harm another student. The sanctions were immediate expulsion from the university effective that day. She was also banned from campus permanently and required to pay restitution for my counseling services and housing relocation costs. Her lawyer tried to argue for a lesser punishment, but the panel said the calculated nature of her actions and the involvement of a faculty member made this an extremely serious case. Lily started sobbing, and her parents, who were sitting in the back of the room, rushed forward to comfort her. Security escorted them all out, and I watched her leave campus for the last time. 2 days later, I sat in a conference room on the 3rd floor of the administration building waiting for Professor Braille's faculty hearing to start. Harper sat next to me reviewing her notes, and Jeremy was across the hall in another room ready to testify when they called him. The faculty committee consisted of 5 professors from different departments who filed in looking serious and professional. Professor Braille entered with her lawyer and sat at the opposite end of the long table. She wouldn't look at me at all. The committee chair explained the charges against her, which included gross misconduct, abuse of authority, and violation of academic ethics. They called me first to testify about what happened in the classroom. I walked through every detail, starting with raising my hand to answer a question and ending with security guards dragging me out while everyone watched. The committee members took notes and asked questions about the timeline and Professor Braille's exact words. Jeremy testified next and showed them the video he recorded on his phone. You could hear everything clearly, including Professor Braille calling security before I did anything disruptive, and her telling the class I had illegal items when she had no way of knowing that. Harper presented documentation of 2 previous complaints against Professor Braille for showing favoritism to family members, and 1 formal warning about inappropriate use of authority. She laid out a pattern of misconduct spanning 3 years that the university had failed to address properly. 8 other students from the economics class submitted written statements describing the classroom incident and confirming I hadn't been threatening or disruptive in any way. The committee questioned Professor Braille about why she called security before any actual disruption occurred in her classroom. She kept insisting she felt threatened by my presence, and had concerns about classroom safety based on information she received. They asked what specific information and from whom. She said she heard rumors about theft allegations and felt it was her duty to protect other students. The committee chair pointed out that hearing rumors doesn't justify calling security on a student who raised their hand to answer a question. They asked how pills appeared in my backpack during a search she specifically requested. Professor Braille claimed she had no knowledge of any planted evidence and was just as surprised as everyone else when security found something. Her lawyer tried arguing she acted in good faith based on legitimate safety concerns, but the committee wasn't buying it. They pulled out phone records showing 17 text messages between Professor Braille and Lily in the 2 days before the classroom incident. The IT department had recovered deleted messages from both their phones as part of the investigation. The committee read several messages out loud. Lily texting that she needed help dealing with her roommate who stole from her. Professor Braille responding that she would handle it during class. Lily asking if the plan would work. Professor Braille confirming she would call security and make sure they searched my bag thoroughly. The messages proved they coordinated the entire classroom confrontation together. They planned the security call in advance, and Professor Braille knew exactly what security would find, because Lily told her what she planted. The lawyer tried claiming the messages were taken out of context, but there was no other way to interpret them. Professor Braille sat there silent while the evidence piled up, showing she conspired with her niece to publicly humiliate and frame a student. The committee took a 30-minute break to deliberate. Harper told me it was going well and the evidence was overwhelming. When they returned, the committee chair read their decision. They found Professor Braille responsible for all charges. She abused her position of authority to harm a student. She coordinated with a family member to plant evidence and stage a false security incident. She violated every standard of academic ethics and professional conduct. The committee terminated her employment effective immediately. She was banned from campus permanently, and they were referring the matter to law enforcement for potential criminal charges of conspiracy and evidence tampering. Professor Braille's lawyer started objecting, but the committee chair cut him off and said the decision was final. Security escorted Professor Braille out of the building. She was crying and trying to argue, but they just kept walking her toward the exit. I watched her go and felt this weird mix of relief and disbelief that it was actually over. Dean Gonzalez called me to her office that afternoon. She shook my hand and thanked me for my courage in fighting the false accusations. She said most students would have just accepted the punishment and moved on, but I stood up for myself and exposed serious institutional problems. The dean explained my case prompted major policy changes in how the university handles student complaints and security procedures. Faculty can no longer unilaterally call security for non-emergency situations without administrative approval. All security searches require documented reasonable suspicion and proper chain of custody for any evidence found. Student Affairs created new training for professors about student rights and due process. The dean said these changes would protect other students from similar abuses in the future. She personally apologized for how the university initially failed me and promised they were committed to doing better. The campus newspaper ran a story 3 days later about the importance of due process and the dangers of rushing to judgment. They didn't use any names, but everyone knew what case they were writing about. The article talked about how false accusations can destroy lives and why evidence matters more than rumors. Several students reached out to me privately after reading it. They shared their own experiences with false accusations, or times when people believed lies about them without checking facts. One girl told me she got accused of cheating last year and almost got expelled before proving her innocence. A guy messaged saying his roommate spread rumors about him stealing and it took months to clear his name. Reading their stories made me realize this happens more often than people think. Jeremy and I started studying together for our economics final with the new professor who took over the class. We met at the library twice a week and went through practice problems and review materials. He joked that we should get extra credit for surviving the most dramatic class session in university history. The new professor was actually really good and seemed genuinely interested in helping students learn rather than playing power games. Jeremy became a real friend through all this. He didn't have to record that video or testify at the hearing, but he did it anyway because it was the right thing to do. We talked about regular stuff too, like his engineering classes and my plans for next semester. It felt good to have normal conversations again after weeks of nothing but legal proceedings and investigations. Harper helped me draft a statement for social media addressing all the rumors and explaining that I was completely cleared of all accusations. We kept it factual and professional without naming anyone specifically. I wrote that false accusations were made against me. Thorough investigations proved they were lies, and the people responsible faced serious consequences. I made clear that spreading rumors and lies about someone has real impacts, and anyone who participated in destroying my reputation should think carefully about their actions. I didn't name Lily or Professor Braille, but anyone who followed the situation knew exactly who I meant. Harper reviewed it 3 times to make sure I wasn't saying anything that could get me in legal trouble. She said it was important to reclaim my narrative and set the record straight publicly. I posted the statement on Instagram that night. Within an hour, I had dozens of supportive comments from classmates and even people I didn't know well. They said they admired how I stood up for myself and didn't let false accusations destroy my life. Some people apologized for believing the initial rumors without waiting for facts. April shared my post with a comment saying she was sorry for not questioning the accusations earlier, and she learned an important lesson about rushing to judgment. Shiloh shared it too with an apology for staying silent when she should have spoken up about what she saw. Their public support meant something even though I was still hurt by how quickly they believed lies about me. My phone kept buzzing with messages and notifications for the rest of the night. Most were positive, but a few people sent nasty messages defending Lily or claiming I was playing victim. I blocked those accounts and focused on the supportive responses. The university implemented new policies 2 weeks later, requiring administrative approval before faculty can call security for non-emergency situations. They created mandatory training on student rights and due process for all professors. Campus security got new protocols about evidence handling and documentation requirements. Student Affairs hired 2 additional advocates to help students navigate disciplinary processes. Dean Gonzalez sent an email to the entire campus announcing the changes and emphasizing the university's commitment to fairness and due process. She didn't mention my case specifically, but everyone connected the dots. The policy changes felt like something good coming from all the terrible things that happened. Maybe other students wouldn't have to go through what I went through because the system would have better protections in place. Kevin from campus security stopped me outside the library 2 days after the policy announcement went out to everyone. He had his usual coffee cup and gave me a small wave when he saw me. I walked over and he told me he wanted to talk about how everything turned out. He said he was really glad the truth came out because cases like mine reminded him why doing a complete investigation mattered more than making quick choices based on what seemed obvious at first. He explained that he'd been using my situation as a training example for the new security officers they were bringing on board. They were learning about evidence handling and why you can't just believe the first story someone tells you without checking all the facts. Kevin said the planted pills case was perfect for teaching because it showed how easy it was to make someone look guilty when they weren't. He thanked me for being patient with the process, even though it was really hard, and told me I should feel proud for standing up for myself when everyone was against me. I appreciated him saying that because not many people had actually apologized or acknowledged what I went through. My new economics professor asked me to stay after class the following week. I got nervous for a second because the last time a professor wanted to talk to me alone, it didn't go well. But she smiled and said she wanted to discuss my work in her class. She told me she was really impressed by how I kept showing up and doing good work, even though I was dealing with such a terrible situation at the same time. She said most students would have fallen apart or stopped coming to class, but I pushed through and my test scores proved I understood the material. Then she offered to write me a recommendation letter for any internships I wanted to apply for. She said she thought companies would value someone who showed that kind of strength when facing unfair treatment. She also mentioned that she heard about what happened with Professor Braille, and the whole department was embarrassed that a faculty member had acted that way. I thanked her and felt this weird mix of happy and sad because it was nice to have a professor actually support me, but it also reminded me how bad things had been just a few weeks earlier. 3 weeks after everything officially concluded, I was finally settling into my new routine in the single room. I unpacked the last of my boxes and put up some posters to make the space feel more like mine. The room was smaller than my old place, but I actually loved having my own space where I didn't have to worry about roommates going through my stuff or accusing me of things I didn't do. My grades came back up after all the stress ended, and I was scoring in the high 80s and low 90s again on my assignments. I joined a study group with some people from my biology class and started going to the campus gym 3 times a week. Life felt normal again in a way it hadn't since before Lily's accusations started this whole mess. I could walk across campus without people staring at me or whispering when I passed by. My phone stopped blowing up with nasty messages, and the Instagram posts about me finally disappeared from people's feeds. I even started sleeping through the night without waking up in a panic about what new terrible thing might happen the next day. My mom visited for Parents' Weekend, and we made plans to have dinner with Harper and Jeremy at this Italian place near campus. I was nervous about everyone meeting, but it actually went really well. My mom hugged Harper for like a full minute when they first met and kept saying thank you over and over. She told Harper that she didn't know what would have happened to me without someone fighting for my rights and making sure the university followed proper procedures. Harper laughed and said my case was honestly the most clear-cut wrongful accusation she'd ever handled. She explained that usually these situations were more complicated with some evidence pointing both ways, but in my case, everything clearly showed I was set up. Jeremy told my mom about recording the classroom incident and how he knew something was really wrong when Professor Braille called security before I'd even done anything. My mom got teary and thanked him for speaking up when he could have just stayed quiet and avoided the drama. We ate pasta and breadsticks and talked about normal things like classes and upcoming holiday plans. It felt good to sit with people who actually believed me and supported me through everything. My mom pulled me aside before we left and said she was really proud of how I handled myself, and that she knew this whole experience made me stronger, even though it shouldn't have happened in the first place. April moved out of the old apartment into a different dorm about a month after Lily got expelled. She texted me asking if I wanted to get coffee, and I wasn't sure at first because I was still hurt by how quickly she believed Lily's lies about me. But I decided to meet her anyway at the Starbucks on campus. She apologized again and said she felt terrible about not questioning the story more carefully before turning against me. She explained that Lily was really convincing and made it seem like she had solid proof, But April should have asked to see the actual evidence instead of just taking her word for it. She told me she learned a big lesson about not spreading rumors or believing accusations without waiting for facts. April said she actually started speaking up in her other classes when people were gossiping about someone, because she realized how much damage rumors could do to a person's life. We started meeting for coffee every couple of weeks after that, and while things weren't exactly like they used to be, I appreciated that she was trying to make up for what happened. She was genuinely sorry about her part in everything, and I could tell she felt bad about how she treated me. I'm genuinely happy with how things turned out, even though I wish none of it had happened in the first place. I'm proud that I didn't let the false accusations completely destroy my life or make me give up on the school. I learned I'm way stronger than I thought I was, because I kept fighting for the truth even when literally everyone seemed to be against me. I found real friends in Jeremy and Harper who stood by me when I had nobody else. The university made real changes to their policies that will protect other students from going through the same kind of unfair treatment I experienced. Professor Braille lost her job and Lily got expelled, so there were actual consequences for what they did to me. My grades are back to normal and I'm doing well in all my classes. I have my own room where I feel safe and don't have to worry about people going through my things. Sometimes I still get anxious when I see campus security or when a professor calls on me in class, but those feelings are getting better with time. The whole experience was horrible, but it taught me important things about standing up for myself and not backing down when I know I'm right. I helped create positive changes that will make things better for students who come after me, and that feels like something good came out of all the terrible things that happened.